Afternoon session of this one-day conference on intellectual property rights in pharmaceuticals. So in this afternoon session, we have three talks. So we'll be starting with Dr. Arvind Mishra, Dr. Arvind Mishra, I will introduce him, a global quality, regulatory and pharma strategy expert, has more than 3 decades of rich experience in global pharma industry. Presently, Dr. Mishra is working as Managing Director of Apar Pharma Consulting, and it is based at Bangalore, Karnataka, India. In addition, his association with other organizations includes New Will Research Innovation, then Syngene Global, and providing consulting services to pharma industries, both finished formulations and active pharmaceutical ingredients, including steroid, in India as well as abroad. Dr. Mishra has obtained his master's degree in analytical chemistry and doctorate in chemistry, pharmaceutical drug analysis from BHU, Varanasi. In the last 30 years, Dr. Mishra has worked as a full-time professional in a number of well-known Indian pharma majors like Lupin, J&K Drugs, Pharmaceuticals, then Strides, then Medridge, Cadila, Claris. Now it is Baxter in various capacities in the area of quality control, quality assurance, corporate quality assurance, global regulatory affairs, research and development, clinical research, overall operations, and as a strategic business unit head. During this period, Dr. Mishra was actively involved in handling of all kinds of formulations and APIs, including biotech and biopharmaceuticals, hormones, oncology, high potent drugs, soft gel, penicillins, cephalosporins, and has faced more than 100 GMP audits from different regulatory agencies, including US FDA, MHRA, etc. Dr. Mishra has been a regular invited speaker and panelist in many Indian and overseas conferences and seminars, and thereby extensively traveled to all major countries in the world, namely USA, France, Netherlands, Germany, etc. So now I hand it over to Dr. Mishra for his talk. Over to you, Dr. Mishra.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaikwad. It's a really honor to participate as a speaker in this conference, and I thank you for this virtual conference organizer for providing me a platform to share my thoughts on this subject, which is very, very relevant in today's industry with the participants. So I will go to the slides. Hope you can see my slides.
Yes, sir. Slides are visible.
My topic is EU GMP requirements for injectable manufacturing facilities, the draft 2020 guideline. During this 45 minutes allotted, I will try to briefly cover the following agenda to put forth my views on the draft 2020 guideline. To start with, let's understand some of the facts about India. And in the agenda, we will cover the Indian pharmaceutical industry, some facts we should be proud of, Indian pharmaceutical industry, where we stand globally, why are GMP regulations required in pharma, why are different types of regulations we have in Indian pharmaceutical or in global pharma industry, GMP, that means European Union Good Manufacturing Practices requirements for injectable. What is the recent history? And in the new draft 2020 Annexure 1 guideline, what are the key changes has been proposed and how it is better than the existing guideline and how it is going to help the pharma industry as a whole. And then see that what are the conclusions we can draw from this presentation. Indian pharmaceutical industry, some of the facts which I want to share with you people. India is the largest producer and supplier of the generic drugs globally. Many of you may be knowing. From the Indian pharmaceutical companies, we supply 50% of the global demand of various vaccines. Many of you may be interested and many of you may be worried when this COVID, and the whole world is worried when the COVID-19 vaccines are coming. Today the Prime Minister is visiting Ahmedabad, Hyderabad, some companies which are actively working on COVID-19 vaccines. So let me tell you that for many years, more than 2-3 decades, India is the largest supplier of global vaccines demand already. These vaccines, why we can export to the countries, because we can manufacture in a large scale as well as we can manufacture in a very economical price. So that's the reason we are 50% of the global demand is met by the Indian pharmaceutical industry. 40% of the US generic demand is met by Indian pharmaceutical, which is a huge quantity. 25% of all medicine in the UK is going from India. About the ARVs, as you are aware that acquired immunodeficiency syndrome disease was very prevalent, and about 80% of the global demand is supplied by India. There are many NGOs, WHO under pre-qualification program in Geneva are buying these medicine from Indian companies, and there are a number of Indian companies are approved from WHO Geneva under the pre-qualification program, and they won these supplies as a tender and then they supply. So almost 80% of the ARVs are made by Indian company. If you look at the turnover wise, Indian pharmaceutical sector is growing very handsomely, and it is expected that by 2024 we will be touching 64 billion, and maybe by 2030 we may touch 200 billion. Domestic market is around 20 billion US dollar, which in Indian term can be 1.4 lakh crore, and this we are growing around 9 to 10%. Indian export is also around 20.7 billion last year, and these all exports are happening because India has the largest number of US FDA GMP compliant manufacturing plant. This includes API also, around 262. These numbers are very dynamic. So if there is some more changes has happened, you can see that. To continue about the same facts of Indian pharmaceutical industry we should be proud of. 50 years ago, only 5% of the domestic market Indian pharma were beating. 95% were from foreign multinationals. And today, we have captured more than 85% of the market share. This I am telling you locally. So, imports of medicine in India is comparatively very low as compared to many other countries, even the advanced countries. Many of the European countries import more medicine than in India. So India is exporting more medicine than importing, which is a good thing. By doing this, we are helping the economy. Even in this COVID-19 situation, India has supported the Indian economy with a great measure. And these all things are happening because in 1970, there was a patent bill which was presented in the parliament, which felt the Indian pharmaceutical industry to be less reliant on the US intellectual property rights. I think in the afternoon there will be some more lectures where you can understand more what is this patent law and intellectual property laws and intellectual property rights, what is the difference between a product patent and a process patent, what is the non-infringing processes. I am not going into detail. But as compared to the finished formulations, Indian API manufacturer benefited most. And that's why the Indian pharmaceutical today is the largest exporter, as well as we have captured the 85% of the local market. Of course, there was some development in 1995 when we joined the WTO, and it came some hurdles, but Indian pharmaceutical is very nicely has passed those hurdles and is still growing handsomely. Today, you can say that, and it is a fact, that India is the third largest exporter of pharmaceutical in volume terms, not in value terms. Many of you may feel that why it is only volume we are third largest, not in value, because we are manufacturing patented economical medicine or pharmaceuticals or APIs which are in very high volume. I can just give you a single example or two. When I was working in Lupin, in fact I joined the Pharma carrier in 1988, I got a calendar where it was written, Lupin is the world largest producer of ethambutol hydrochloride. Ethambutol hydrochloride is used for anti-TB, anti-tubercular. It's an anti-tubercular medicine. Now, Lupin at that time was 95% of the world market. Lupin was meeting. Even today, Lupin is the highest, largest producer or world leader in ethambutol. And how much they were producing? They were producing more than 100 tons. 100 tons mean how many thousand kilos you can understand, because it's a 800 milligram tablet. Similarly, there are nowadays, like a few years back when I was working in Pharma, we were making ranitidine hydrochloride, which is 60 tons per month we were using and making ranitidine tablets, which is used for acidity. SLR 150. Now you can understand these are the high volume, and today anti-diabetic, metformin. This is also very high. Paracetamol or acetaminophen. These are very high volume products. So there are a number of products which India has mastered because that can be produced at a very low cost, because we have a highest young manpower, knowledgeable manpower, as well as a plant which is set up in India is 30 to 40% cheaper than in many US and European. So these are the things, because we are focusing more into African market, Latin American market, South Asian market, those are patent drug, and Russian market. And those are patent drugs are very economical, like I mentioned you about ARVs. That's why our total, in value terms, we are about 10th or 11th. In the last 10 years, we are growing handsomely. So in 2012, if you see, our exports was 10.1 billion US dollar, and this year in 2020, it is 20.7 US billion, which is a very good growth. So about 10 billion or 1 billion per month, per year we are increasing. So what are growth drivers and what are the opportunities next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in the Indian pharmaceutical. If we see, there are a lot of support from government. So R&D infrastructure is improving. Top Indian companies, if you see how much they are spending on their R&D, research and development of their revenue, it is 2 to 10%. Some of the companies are investing more than 10%, but it is nowhere with multinational, foreign multinational. As you are aware that a new drug or an innovative drug will take 5 to 10 years to come up and then a lot of money. So it is not easy. So those areas, only few companies are focusing on, whereas the rest of the companies are focusing on the off-patent generic drugs, which is a huge market. In that process, in last 30, 40 years, India has focused into the US market, and today we are the highest number of US FDA compliant plant. Every year we are submitting highest number of ANDAs, which is a abbreviated drug application, which is for the generic drug, as well as for API, we are submitting drug master file. So we are more than China, more than any country. India is the fastest. Low cost production, as I was mentioning, that in India, both labor as well as production cost is cheaper in India. A recent FICCI report says that 30 to 40% it is cheaper when we make a formulation in India as compared to the advanced countries like US and Europe. We have a high educated workforce, and the recent Atmanirbhar Bharat, vocal for local. So India is still dependent on China for many of the key raw materials, which is required to manufacture API and intermediate, and government has announced a few schemes, technology parks are coming, where the API will be manufactured, and there will be less reliance on China. The foreign companies are also investing a lot of money in India, in the Indian pharmaceutical sector, and there is a 100% FDI allowed in the pharmaceutical if you are having a new plant. Those who are interested to know what are the 10 big companies, this is about the turnover, not the market capitalization. So Sun Pharma, Arvind Mishra, Cipla, Reddy's, Zydus, Intas, Glenmark, Torrent, Mankind. This is a very dynamic list. So this keeps changing. So these are the big companies in India which are contributing a lot of exports from India, as well as they are the major player in India. Now coming back to why are GMP regulations required in pharma? This is not only in India, for every country. Pharma manufacturing across the globe is a regulated industry because it's an ethical business. The products and the procedures which are involve the patient safety as well as patient health. That's why each country's regulatory body have their own guidelines, have their sets of rules. Like in India, we have a Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940 and Rules 1945. And in that you can find out Schedule M. Schedule M is also revised. So the Schedule M covers the good manufacturing practices for all kinds of formulation, including APIs. These rules and regulations are published by these agencies, and one of them was EU or EMA, and these are regularly updated. Unlike finished formulation, in API, the good thing which has happened that we have a universal guideline, which is called ICH-Q7. And this guideline has superseded all the guidelines of the world. So, at present, in the whole world, if you are producing an API, you have to follow ICH-Q7. This has happened because the International Council of Harmonization, which involves countries like US, Europe and Japan, they have get together and they have come out with a very comprehensive global guideline. Maybe we are in the process of having a similar guideline coming for finished formulation as well as for injectable. So regulatory agencies across the world, they periodically inspect the manufacturing facility in their own country as well as outside the country. And when the facilities are not complying to their regulation, they are barred to manufacture those products, or they are not allowed to export those products in other market. Local GMP versus global GMP. Each manufacturer has to follow and comply local regulation. It is not that if you are exporting, you should not follow the local laws. So local laws, local guidelines has to be followed. And if a manufacturer wishes to export your product in other country, then they have to follow those countries' requirement. And that's why if you want to export in US market, you have to follow US FDA guideline. If you want to export to European market, you have to follow EGMP guideline. If you want to export to Japan, you have to follow Japanese guideline, and like that. For API, since the guideline is one, then it is very easy for the manufacturer to follow those guidelines, set up that plant, and then introduce those SOPs. For more than 25 years or so, what happened, US, EU and Japan, as I was mentioning, they came together and they thought that we have to harmonize all the guidelines so that it makes easy for the quality compliance and GMP compliance. Why this ICH country, US, Europe, Japan? Because the whole global pharma market is about 80% in these regions. So that's why if you want to go into these regions, you have to follow ICH guidelines. ICH guidelines are also very, very applicable to Indian pharmaceutical industry, and the EU GMP Annexure 1, which I am going to discuss, will also touch upon these ICH guidelines and how they are assimilated into this. These harmonized guidelines are in the areas of quality. There are a number of guidelines, many of you are aware. In case of efficacy and safety, and then there are many multidisciplinary guidelines are also there, which are used by manufacturer of pharmaceutical. Coming back to this Utralex, this is a new GMP kind of thing, volume 4, which deals with the good manufacturing practices. Annexure 1 is related to manufacture of sterile medicine products, whereas this volume 4 is good manufacturing practices for medicinal product for both human use and veterinary use. These are all kinds of, whether it is a tablet, capsules, or any other formulation liquid, these are all governed by Utralex volume 4. But if you manufacture sterile medicinal products, whether it is API or formulation, you have to follow Annex 1 in addition to other guidelines. Now, just you imagine, if you look at the history or recent history in 17 years, this Annex 1, which came in 2003, then it was revised for clean room classification, for bioburden monitoring, and even the capping of vials. Earlier, what was happening, after the vial is put, rubber stopper is put on the vial, the capping was done in an uncontrolled area. Uncontrolled means there is no classification of area. And then this classification was introduced, and it was found that when the rubber stoppered vial, still there is a chance of contamination, and that's why there should be a certain class has to be maintained before the aluminum cap is done. So, though it is called Annex 1 2008, which introduced in November 2008, but it was actually revised by March 2010. This is the guideline which Indian or any global manufacturers are using if they are exporting their product to EU market. So this particular guideline is only 16 pages. If you have a guideline which is only 16 pages, it doesn't elaborate many of the requirements. So it invites various interpretations. As you are very well aware that many companies, not only in India, across the world, when they read these guidelines, they feel that this much only is the requirement. They have their own interpretation. Now, this interpretation becomes a problem or becomes a bottleneck when any inspectors from the Europe is coming and he tells on the side that actually guideline does not mean this, the guideline means this, and then the argument takes place, and that's where the problem is. What the EU GMP Annex 1 Draft 2020 Consultating Committee which met and they came out with this particular draft, they have gone into the key areas of the earlier guideline, that is 2008 guideline, which has been revised in 2010, and then in between also there were revision in 2015, there were revision in 2017, but these are all in draft stages. No final publication has yet come. Maybe tomorrow we have a harmonized guideline, who knows. So this particular, as compared to 16 pages, this guideline is 52 pages. So you can understand that many of the things have been revised and many things has been elaborated. Now, we can very well say that this latest consultation draft is not a simple revision. It is a rewrite. The revision committee who were responsible for this draft were from EMA, that is European Medical Agency, Medicine Agencies, WHO, PICS. As you are aware, many of you are aware of PICS countries and agencies which are also attached to PICS. Most of the major agencies of the world are PICS member, or they are very, very closely working with PICS. They are registered with PICS agency, starting from US FDA to TGA to MHRA, everybody. And even US FDA inputs has also been taken to make this, rewrite this particular guideline. As I mentioned about the various ICH guidelines which are applicable. In this particular draft guideline, what we see and what I have observed personally, that there are two major areas where the emphasis has been given and which has been elaborated to make the industry understand the importance. One is the principle of quality risk management, which is actually ICHQ 9, and also implement a robust contamination control strategy across your facility. So these are the two things which is the major revamp of the earlier guideline. In the risk management process, or the ICHQ 9, which came into operation in November 2005, and it was immediately adopted by EMA. What it says, it expects the manufacturer of whether injectable product, it is also applicable to all kinds of products and API, that you must identify all the risks at your facility. And then you make the assessment of these risks, whether it is a critical risk, whether it is a major risk, whether it is a minor risk, what are the impact these risks are going to have on the product. And then through a robust SOP and protocol, you should have a risk mitigation plan. Then you implement those risk mitigation plan and you periodically monitor. Also, you review those implementation and those plans, and if required, you can update your risk plan. So these are the risk management process which is elaborated in this particular draft. Coming back to the technical and organizational elements of contamination control strategy, you can see that what is the organization or a manufacturing facility is not bricks and wall. It is people. So both infrastructure, when we talk of infrastructure, it is premises, utilities, raw material, product container, what are the outsourcing you do, cleaning and disinfection, and what are the monitoring you do. In the organizational matters, since you are not doing all the products yourself, you are taking the help of outside agencies, third party, then you have to, what kind of vendor approval you have to do. You have to do process risk assessment. You have to do all kinds of process validation, prospective process validation, concurrent and retrospective process validation. For all the equipment and utilities, you should have a robust preventive maintenance program. And in the quality system, you have to maintain all kinds of trains, whether it is an environmental monitoring train, whether it is a water train, and other process train. What are the corrective and preventive measures which you are doing? When you are doing an investigation, you have to identify the exact root cause and what kind of investigation tools you are using for doing this investigation has been emphasized in this particular draft under the contamination control strategy. This particular slide I want to show that in 2018, this is a compilation which has been done by Uber consulting firm, which is doing this kind of compilation for UK MHRA GMP inspection deficiencies. Though MHRA or UK is not the part of EU now, but when they were part of EU, if you see around 1,500 quality deficiencies in 1 year has been found, which is related to pharmaceutical quality system.